I only put up with you because of your son. You're just a worthless old witch." The words slapped harder than her hand ever could. She said them while standing in the kitchen I built, wearing slippers I bought, eating dinner I cooked. And when she walked away, she didn't even look back. Just tossed her hair, sat on the couch, and turned the volume up on the TV like I hadn't just been gutted. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there holding the plate I had prepared for her, still warm, still full, untouched. Because I knew something she didn't. She thought I was just the frail, quiet mother-in-law in the back room, waiting for her turn to be wheeled into a nursing home and forgotten. But she didn't know the story behind the woman she just tried to erase. She didn't know what I'd done to raise the man she now called her husband. She didn't know how I'd worked double shifts at the diner in Knoxville for 15 years, or how I taught myself to fix the plumbing under our farmhouse sink with duct tape and prayer when the money ran dry. She didn't know that I raised him, my boy Samuel, alone after his mother walked out and never looked back. How I stood between him and pain his whole childhood. How I gave up every piece of myself so he'd never feel like he had less than anyone else. She married the man I built. And now, after years of biting my tongue, folding laundry she never thanked me for, and staying silent while she acted like she owned this house, I was done. Because no one calls me a worthless old witch and walks away like it's gospel truth. He wanted a war? She didn't know I'd already survived worse. My name is Virginia Mae Easton. I'm 76 years old. And I didn't come this far in life to be dismissed in my own home. Especially not by someone who doesn't know what I've been through to keep this family whole. And if she thought I was going to pack up and vanish quietly into the corner of her life, she had another thing coming. Because I wasn't done talking. And I sure as hell wasn't done fighting. The house was quiet that night. Too quiet. I could hear the low hum of the dishwasher, the ticking of the clock on the wall, and the occasional click of the television remote from the living room where she lounged, like nothing had happened. She didn't apologize. Didn't peek in to say goodnight. Not even a fake thanks for dinner. Just silence. But silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's packed with everything you need to finally see things clearly. I sat on the edge of my bed, still wearing the same sweater I had on when she called me a worthless old witch. I stared at the wall, not blinking, not breathing too deep. Then I stood up, opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, and pulled out the folder I hadn't touched in nearly 5 years. The one labeled, House Deed. Original owner, Virginia M. Easton. That house, this house, was mine. Paid for with tip money and patched up overalls. Every shingle, every brick, every floorboard soaked with the sweat and worry of one woman who refused to quit. It was the house where I raised Samuel. The one he brought her into when they got married before she started redecorating and calling everything hers. She'd once told her sister, loud enough for me to hear from the hallway, "We just let his mother stay here so we don't have to pay for assisted living." But me? She thought I was some stray cat on their porch? No, I was the roof over their heads. But somehow over time I'd let them chip away at my place. One small insult here, a dismissal there. I gave in too much. Smiled when I should have spoken. Cleaned up when I should have stood up. And now she thought she had won. She thought she'd pushed me so far into the background that I wouldn't notice what was happening right in front of me. The bank statements had stopped arriving in my name. The family photo wall she took down, replaced with frames that had no pictures of me at all. And Samuel, my son, he didn't see it. Or maybe he did and just didn't know how to stop it. She was clever like that. She used kindness as a currency. Cooked his favorite meals, wore soft-spoken smiles, and always called me Mama V when he was around. But behind closed doors, she acted like I was the housemaid. Like I owed her something for letting me grow old in the home I built. I closed the folder and tucked it under my arm. And I made a decision. No more waiting for her to slip. No more letting her story erase mine. I didn't know exactly how yet. But I was going to remind her, and Samuel, whose name was on the foundation of this family. And I wasn't going to raise my voice to do it. Because quiet strength always lasts longer than loud cruelty. The next morning I woke up before the sun. I made coffee like I always do. 2 scoops, black, no sugar, and sat at the small kitchen table by the window, watching the light stretch over the dew-covered grass. She didn't come down until nearly 9 a.m., wrapped in one of my old robes, the one with the quilted roses on the sleeves. I watched her from the corner of my eye as she yawned loudly and poured herself the last of the coffee without asking if I wanted another cup. Then as she turned her back, she said, flat and easy like she was discussing the weather, "We've been talking about maybe redoing the back bedroom, making it a home office." I didn't reply, but I knew what she meant. My room. My space. My little corner of peace in the house I bought and paid for. She wanted to move me out like a spare chair she didn't know what to do with. Just a day ago she called me worthless, and now she was planning how to erase me one room at a time. She didn't wait for my response. Just left her empty mug in the sink and floated back upstairs like she owned the air she breathed. But she forgot something. The house may have been quiet, but I was not gone. That afternoon when Samuel got home from work, I asked if we could talk. Just him and me. No drama. We sat on the porch like we used to when he was a boy, and I'd give him cornbread after school. He looked tired, worn down in the eyes. "What's going on, Mama?" he asked. So I told him. Everything. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call her names. I didn't make him choose. I just laid the facts out. What she said to me, how she's been treating me, how she's slowly tried to erase my presence in my own home. I told him I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. He stared down at his hands, quiet. After a long moment he said, "I didn't know it was that bad." That was all. No outrage. No defense. Just 6 words that told me he wasn't blind. He was just afraid to see. "She needs to respect this house," I said gently. "And the people who built it." He nodded slowly. "I'll talk to her," he said. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. Because the problem wasn't just her. It was that I had given her all the space she needed to build a kingdom inside walls she didn't own. And now it was time to take some of that space back. With or without his help. It started small. I stopped folding her laundry. Stopped cleaning up after her in the kitchen. Left the mugs where she left them. Dishes in the sink. I let them sit. I didn't say a word. Didn't slam cabinets. Just let the silence stretch. I think it unsettled her more than any shouting match could have. Then I started locking my bedroom door at night. She didn't say anything, but I noticed her pause one morning when she tried the knob and found it wouldn't turn. I sat inside on the edge of my bed, sipping my coffee with the deed folder resting across my lap. Let her wonder. The next day I went to see Mr. Carlton, the same man who'd handled the legal paperwork for this house back when I first signed the loan. He was still practicing, older now, with white hair and reading glasses that slid down his nose. He greeted me with a smile that said he remembered the girl I was and the woman I became. I laid the folder on his desk and said, "I want to make it clear that this house is still mine." He nodded and asked if there had been any recent paperwork filed under Samuel or his wife's name. We looked together. Nothing official. But Mr. Carlton raised an eyebrow. "Someone's been inquiring about the title," he said, scrolling through his screen. "Looks like your daughter-in-law requested a title search a few weeks ago." My hands went cold. So she had plans. She was testing the waters. I smiled politely and said, "Can we draft something that states ownership and occupancy rights in case things turn?" He smiled right back. "I'll draw up a declaration today," he said. "And I'll make sure it's recorded with the county." That night, I placed the fresh documents in my cedar chest, right beside the original deed. I didn't have to wave them in anyone's face. Not yet. The power wasn't in showing them. The power was in knowing they were mine. Later that week, I caught her on the phone, her voice low, sharp, whispering from the pantry. "I'm telling you, she's just taking up space. I can't live like this. It's either her or me." I didn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I didn't need to. Because I knew exactly what she was planning. She thought she could turn Samuel against me completely. Push me out. Make me look unstable. Frail. Confused. But she was wrong. Because for the first time in years I wasn't unsure of anything. Not my mind. Not my memory. Not my name. And not my place in this house. She wanted to turn this into a quiet eviction. She had no idea I was building a quiet defense. The next few days were like living in a standoff. We didn't argue. We didn't speak. But every move we made was calculated. her slamming a cabinet just a bit louder when I was near, me sitting in her favorite chair in the living room with my feet up and a book in my lap. Samuel was caught in the middle, but he pretended not to notice. Or maybe he didn't want to admit what was really happening. He came home later than usual. Ate quietly. Barely looked at either of us. One morning while I was dusting the living room shelves, I found something tucked behind the row of decorative candles she'd lined up like soldiers. A brochure. Not for a cruise or a new kitchen set, but for an assisted living facility. With notes scribbled in the margins in her handwriting. Looks peaceful. Private rooms available. Close to urgent care. She hadn't even bothered to hide it well. She was planning something formal now. Something permanent. I held the brochure in my hand for a long time. Then I slid it back exactly where I found it. Let her think I didn't notice. Let her think I was slipping. That night I went back to Mr. Carlton. We added an amendment. Not just ownership of the house, but full occupancy rights, legally filed and stamped. She couldn't touch a thing without my consent. Couldn't move me, couldn't evict me, couldn't so much as rent out the back bedroom unless I signed off. I walked home with the paperwork tucked tight in my purse. I passed through the front door with my head held higher than it had been in months. She was in the kitchen again talking on the phone. This time louder. No, she hasn't said anything yet. But she's slower than she used to be. I think we'll need to make a case for early-stage memory decline. If we act soon. She stopped talking when she saw me. Smiled that fake sweet smile like she'd just been talking about a recipe instead of trying to paint me as a woman who'd lost her mind. I smiled back. Said nothing. As she was making a mistake. She was underestimating me. Let her build her plan. I was already 3 steps ahead. And if she thought I was going to be locked away quietly, she was about to learn just how loud a so-called worthless old witch could be. She must have thought I was fragile. That I didn't notice how she started checking in on me more. Asking odd questions while pretending to be helpful. Did you take your medication today? How long did you sleep last night? Do you remember what day it is, Mama V? She'd say it with a smile voice like honey, but I could taste the vinegar underneath. And Samuel, he watched from the sidelines saying less and less. I didn't know if he was just tired or if he was scared to pick a side. Either way, he didn't stop her. And that said enough. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found her sorting through my mail. My name on every envelope. Her fingers prying each one open like it belonged to her. I cleared my throat. She jumped. Oh, I was just organizing. It's easy to mix things up. I walked right past her and picked up the letter from Social Security. Do I need to start labeling my mail now? I asked. She didn't answer. Just gave that small, tight-lipped grin and slipped out of the room. Later that afternoon I went to the attic. Pulled out the box with all of Samuel's childhood drawings and school awards. Not because I needed nostalgia, but because I needed to remind myself who I was, and who I raised. I sat on the floor for hours, reading the letters he wrote me in crayon, the Mother's Day cards with stick figures and hearts. You're the strongest woman in the world, he'd once scribbled in crooked handwriting. He believed that. Back then. I wondered what changed. Was it her? Or was it just life? I found a letter from his birth mother too. One single envelope. Postmarked 1987. Virginia, I can't do this. You're stronger than me. Take care of him. She left me with a baby and a sentence. And I still did it. Alone. So if I could do that, I could do this. That evening I made a decision. I called an old friend from church, Lorraine. A Spitfire widow who didn't trust anything that came from a smile too big. I need a favor, I said. She didn't even ask what. She just said, what time? We met at the diner off Route 14 the next morning. I laid everything out. What Claudette had been saying, what she was doing, and what I feared was coming next. Lorraine listened. Took notes like a court reporter. You need to get ahead of this, she said. And you need witnesses. Documentation. People who'll vouch that your mind is sharp. We made a plan. Because I wasn't going to wait until they dragged me out of this house. I was going to make sure when they tried to come for me, there'd be people watching. People are ready to fight with me. I didn't survive abandonment, poverty, and a lifetime of quiet sacrifice just to end up erased by someone who never bothered to learn my story. Let her keep plotting. I was laying the groundwork too, brick by brick. Lorraine worked faster than I expected. Within days, she had arranged for me to meet with a friend of hers, a retired social worker named Gwen who now volunteered with elder advocacy groups. We sat in Gwen's sunroom while she asked me questions, not just about my current situation, but about my memory, mental clarity, and daily habits. I answered every one, recited phone numbers, current events, old family recipes, told her exactly which medications I took and when, listed off the names of all the neighbors on our street. When I finished, she smiled and said, "Virginia, not only are you sound, you're sharp." I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Reassured. She offered to write up a letter confirming my cognitive health and submit it with my legal documentation, just in case. Paper speaks, she said. And courts listen to paper. The next step was the church. Lorraine helped me get a small speaking spot at Sunday service. Something quiet and simple. I stood in front of familiar faces, most of whom had known me since I was barely out of my 20s. I didn't name names. Didn't cry. I just told a story. A story about growing older and being told, subtly and not so subtly, that your presence is a burden. A story about how sometimes the people you open your home to think they've earned the right to claim it. The room was silent. I saw heads nod. Saw hands tighten around hymnals. And when I walked back to my pew, I felt something shifting. The whispers would start, I knew. But so would the watchful eyes. Let Claudette try to claim I was unwell. There would now be a dozen people who could say otherwise. Later that week, I made one more move. I opened a safe deposit box at the bank and placed copies of the house deed, the declaration of occupancy, the cognitive evaluation, and a handwritten letter outlining recent events inside. Just in case. Just in case she tried something sudden. Something cruel. Because I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. A sense that she was growing impatient. And I was right. 3 days later, while Samuel was at work, I overheard her on the phone again. This time louder. Bolder. She's making it difficult. But I have enough to prove she's slipping. All it takes is one report and I can get control of the house. Once that's done, we can renovate the entire property. Finally. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. And she didn't realize I was recording. Lorraine had lent me a small voice recorder. I had it tucked under the doily on the side table. The next morning, I printed the audio transcript. It was clear word for word. I placed it in a folder. Because now I didn't just have documents. I had her voice. I waited for the right moment. You don't rush something like this. No. You set the table. Light the candle. Let her walk straight into it. That Sunday I made breakfast for everyone. Eggs, biscuits, thick-cut bacon, the works. I even laid out cloth napkins, the ones with lace trim she usually said were too fussy. She looked suspicious, hovering in the doorway. "What's all this for?" she asked. I just smiled. Family deserves a proper breakfast. Samuel looked up from his coffee and gave a small smile. "Looks good, Mama." I made sure the recorder was tucked safely away in my purse, and the printed transcript was slipped inside a folder by my chair. She sat down like she was royalty. Picked at the food. Complained the grits were lumpy. And then she made her move. "We've been thinking," she started slowly, buttering a biscuit she didn't deserve. "It might be best for everyone if we started looking into some long-term support for you. A place that has nurses. More structure. You know." Samuel looked up, confused. She continued, "Somewhere more suited to your needs." I kept my hands folded in my lap. "Is that so?" I said softly. She nodded like it was charity. "I found a place not far from here. Clean, private, peaceful. They do mental evaluations, help with medications. It's really very respectful." Samuel turned toward me, uneasy now. I could see the doubt forming in his eyes. Not about me, but about her. He thought she was winning. So I reached for the folder. "I'd like to share something too," I said. She blinked. I opened it calmly. Slid the printed transcript across the table. "This is what you said on the phone. The one you thought I couldn't hear." Her face changed instantly. Color drained from her cheeks. Her jaw locked. Samuel leaned forward, eyes scanning the lines quickly. "I have enough to prove she's slipping," he read aloud. "Then, once that's done, we can renovate the entire property." He stopped reading. Looked at her. She stammered. That's taken out of context." "I also have the audio," I said. "And legal documentation affirming I am of sound mind, and full owner and occupant of this house." She stood up. Knocked her chair over. "You're setting me up." "No," I said quietly, still seated. "You did that yourself." Samuel looked between us like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Leave." She blinked. "What?" He pointed toward the stairs. "Go back. Now." She didn't move. So he repeated it. This time louder. I said go. I didn't look at her when she stormed off. I just stared at my folded hands. Samuel stayed quiet a long time. Then he whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mama." I didn't say anything right away. I just let the silence settle. Because I'd earned it. The kind of silence that follows when someone finally sees you, truly sees you, for the first time in years. By the time I heard the screen door slam, I knew she was gone. She didn't say goodbye. Didn't apologize. Just dragged her suitcase behind her like she was the one betrayed. Like she was the victim. Let her carry that lie somewhere else. Samuel didn't go after her. He didn't call her either. He just sat there at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the transcript like it was a map he couldn't read. He finally looked at me and said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I gave him a tired smile. "Because I wanted you to see it for yourself." And he had. It took longer than I wanted, but he had finally seen it. That night he cooked dinner for the first time in what felt like years. Burned the chicken, undercooked the rice, but I didn't complain. He was trying. That meant something. Afterward, we sat on the porch together, rocking chairs creaking in rhythm with the cicadas. He held a glass of sweet tea. I held my silence. "I've been blind, haven't I?" he asked. I didn't answer. Some questions don't need words. He said, "You raised me alone. You didn't owe me anything. But you gave me everything." I felt the burn behind my eyes. But I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in the dark. This moment wasn't about grief. It was about the beginning of healing. "I let her come between us," he continued. "I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet." "You're not the only one who thought that," I said. We rocked a little longer. Then he asked the question I never expected. "Can I stay? I mean, just until I figure things out." I looked at him for a long moment. My boy, grown, flawed, but finally aware. "Of course," I said. "But you're doing your own laundry this time." He laughed. It cracked open something between us that had been shut for too long. The next few days were quiet. Not tense quiet. Peaceful quiet. I found my kitchen smelling like cinnamon again. The garden was blooming, untouched by her footsteps. And the house for the first time in years felt like mine again. Not because I'd thrown anyone out, but because I'd stood my ground. I told Lorraine everything. She showed up with a pie and a prayer. Said she always knew Claudette was rotten under all that polish. We sat together, two old women who'd lived too much life to be fooled anymore. "You taught her a lesson," she said. "I didn't need to," I replied. She gave it to herself. Because some people dig their own graves with the lies they tell, and the kindness they take for granted. Fall came fast that year. The trees turned red and gold almost overnight, like even nature wanted to mark a new beginning. I spent more time outside than I had in years, trimming hedges, tending to the flower beds she once called a waste of time. My knees didn't work like they used to, but my hands remembered everything. Each day felt lighter. Samuel helped around the house without being asked. He fixed the porch railing, finally replaced that flickering hallway light, and brought home fresh peaches from the market because he remembered how I used to love them with cream. We weren't perfect. There were still quiet moments, sometimes awkward, where we tiptoed around the years lost between us. But he tried. And I let him. One afternoon he handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Something overdue," he said. Inside was a handwritten letter. A real one. No email. No text. just ink on paper. He had written it like he used to when he was a boy, when words came easier on paper than in person. He apologized for the distance, for the silence, for letting someone else define the story of his mother. He said he saw me now, not just as Mama V but as Virginia Easton, the woman who built a life from scratch, raised a son through storms and never stopped giving even when the world gave nothing back. He ended it with one line that cracked something open in my chest. "You are the reason I know what strength looks like." I folded the letter and pressed it to my heart. Not because I needed his validation, but because I had waited so long to be truly seen. Later that week, I met with Gwen one final time and updated my legal documents. Everything in place. The house. The will. The story. I even wrote my own letter to be read when I was gone. Not out of fear but out of peace. Because I wasn't leaving bitter. I was leaving better. And when people asked what happened to Claudette, I didn't speak badly about her. I didn't need to. People know the truth when it shows up with dignity. One crisp morning, as I sat on the porch with a mug of tea and the sunrise warming my face, I smiled, not at the past but at what I'd reclaimed. My voice. My name. My home. If you've ever been made to feel small in a house you built or erased from a life you sacrificed everything for, know this. You still matter. And you still have time to take your place back. Not with rage, but with quiet strength. And the kind of grace that can't be stolen. If this story spoke to you, like, comment and subscribe. Share it with someone who's still finding their voice. Because sometimes, the softest voice is the one that changes everything.